And I think what we're watching ratchet up right now from this administration, from Trump himself, from Kristi Noem, from Stephen Miller, from Pete Hegseth, is this increasingly unsubtle approach to the Insurrection Act. And look, the last time the U.S. government arrested civil officials in either a mayor or a member of Congress or an elected official of any kind was 1861 during the Civil War. 1862, excuse me, during the Civil War. And it was even then when Lincoln had suspended habeas corpus, it was done very rarely, very, very cautiously. It wasn't tweeted out at 1 billion miles an hour saying, yeah, this guy just disagrees with me. These were people who were in open rebellion against the United States of America, who said, we want to destroy the United States of America and replace it with the Confederacy. So it was the mayor of Baltimore, in fact, that got pinged on that one. But this is not that world. These are people who disagree with a domestic political policy of the president, and now he wants to put him in jail. Jim, I think we're very close to the edge. I think we're teetering very much on that edge. I think Stephen Miller is doing everything he can to push us over, but we are in a tough spot right now, and Americans who underestimated this for a long time, who undercounted this, who said, "Oh, he'd never do that. He'd never go that far. It would never get that crazy." I have news for y'all. It's that crazy.
Yeah, no, and NBC is reporting. I mean, speaking of the Insurrection Act, I want to get your take on this. NBC is just reporting in the last several minutes that White House officials have held increasingly serious discussions in recent days about Trump invoking the Insurrection Act, a rarely used 19th century law. And I mean, you know, obviously this surrounds this deployment of the National Guard into Democratic cities and so on. But, you know, I've been saying on my show, Rick, you know, Trump and Stephen Miller are the last people who should be using the word insurrection. They are the insurrectionists. But I think this takes us to the edge you're talking about.
You know, look, I mean, they're actually experienced with insurrection since they planned and executed the January 6th insurrection, which was definitionally an insurrection because its objective was to overthrow the legal government of the United States that had been elected in that November. So I think the problem we're watching right now is that Trump is telling us every day on the air, well, I could do it if I wanted to. And whenever he says that, folks, that's a real tell. Over the years, he said things like that. Well, I could pardon the January 6th insurrectionists. I could do it. I have the right to do it. It's very legal for me to do it. And he does it. He's talking about I could pardon Ghislaine Maxwell. And, you know, that's got the White House internal folks freaking out.
Right.
And he's saying he could declare the Insurrection Act. He could put active duty military forces into the streets and active duty forces with rules of engagement for the first time in a state where we are not in a civil war, active duty forces for the first time into the streets. Now, look, the Insurrection Act has been invoked 2 times in our living memory. One during the desegregation of the Arkansas schools. That was a brief deployment, mostly symbolic. It was not a long-term, long-haul thing. There were very strict rules of engagement. And once at the request of the governor of California, during the LA riots in 92, my old boss, H.W. Bush, again, deployed those forces. And they were deployed as logistical support for the California Guard and the California law enforcement and LA law enforcement. And it was on a super restricted set of rules of engagement. But when you hear the language of Trump, when you hear the language of Miller, when they're saying these are terrorists, we must attack them, we're going to go full force, I think that should be a huge red flag for Americans. That should caution Americans at a level that is really dangerous for this republic right now.
Yeah, I mean, it's a bit of a disconnect. As dishonest as he is, he means what he says. And when he's forecasting this kind of stuff, you ought to believe what he's saying. And JB Pritzker, I mean, you know, I don't know what the governor of Illinois or the mayor of Chicago can do. I mean, JB Pritzker put out a tweet saying, I will not back down. Trump is now calling for the arrest of elected representatives, checking his power. What else is left on the path to full-blown authoritarianism? I mean, I think he's well within his rights to say that sort of thing. But Rick, I mean, the thing that I keep coming back to, and I've talked about this on the show, is, they've deployed Texas National Guard members to Illinois, which sounds like something out of the Civil War. I hate to use that kind of language, but can you imagine, what would Texas do? Or you're in Florida, Tallahassee, what would they do if the Illinois National Guard came there?
I mean, Jim, you look at this, and you have red state governors, you have Abbott and DeSantis and others begging Trump, like, use our troops. You take our troops to go and get those people you don't like. I think that is the most disturbing development in this country, in our politics, in a long time. They are trying to score political points with Trump by offering up politically reliable troops for him to use against blue state governors and blue state mayors and blue state Americans. And that idea seems to be predicated underneath it with, well, we don't trust them to not follow orders, but we trust these guys from Texas to follow orders. Although I will say, given Pete Hegseth's hissy fit last week about fitness standards in the military, those guys clearly won the Battle of Whataburger, but not much else lately.
Yeah, there's some of these ICE guys did not win the Battle of the Bulge. I'll just put it that way. But the other thing, Rick, and I don't, not to spring something on you and just, figure out whether we can talk about it or not, but Stephen Miller made some mention of plenary authority, that Trump has plenary authority. He made this comment on cable news, and what in God's name is he talking about? A lot of our subscribers and viewers are like, what is this? Yeah.
For your viewers who are not familiar with the unitary executive theory, because we're going in the hole now, folks.
That's what we're doing.
I'm sorry, we're going in the hole. In the unitary executive theory, there is a belief that executive authority is what they call plenary, which means it is not restrained by law or by legislation, or by law or legislative intent or Congress. It is universally powerful. Plenary authority is something that cannot be doubted that the president may do it. So Miller using that particular word, I think that's a very deliberate choice.
Yes.
I think it's a very deliberate setup so that he can so that Trump will hear that word and say, wait, that means I can do whatever I want. I can shoot them in the leg.
Right.
All the things he was told by real lawyers and in his prior administration, no, boss, you can't do that. Now Miller is giving him candy. Here, Donald, this is your the Supreme Court gave you a get out of jail free card, and now we're giving you superpowers to do whatever you want. It is one of those phrases out of DC's sort of nightmare closet that, and by the way, the plenary authority normally means things like the president and only the president may appoint ambassadors.
Right. Or
the president and only the president may make certain decisions about appointments to jobs and in the government.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, but there's such a thing as separation of powers. I mean, I read the goddamn Federalist Papers,
you know what? About 3 months ago, I went back and I reread the Federalist Papers and to nerd out completely the anti-Federalist Papers because I wanted to get me some founder vibe going on. And I did. And you know what? These guys, the most amazing through line of all that stuff was the fear of tyranny.
That's right.
Was the fear of kings and tyranny. And we're a country deliberately built in our political and legislative DNA to resist tyranny. And it'd be easier if we didn't have a Supreme Court that was like pro-tyranny and a House of Representatives that is cheerleading the pro-tyranny side of this, and a Senate that's sort of like, we'll just go along for the ride.
Yeah, I know. And don't get me started on that because I've had a problem with this Obamacare subsidies thing for about a week now, that's all they're going for. And I don't want to go down that road because I'm trying not to chase the bright, shiny object.
Oh, believe me, I got plenty of phone calls last week after I wrote a piece about that. Plenty of I can't believe you're attacking that. I'm like, I'm telling you what will work. And if you think arguing over the percentage cuts to ACA subsidies are going to move the great bulk of the American people, but the good news,
important
news. Yeah. And by the way, that's a meritorious thing to argue for. It's just not
Very
the thing you got to argue for right now.
Yeah.
But the good news is Trump is losing the shutdown fight.
He is.
He is getting his ass handed. My son wrote a piece for Lincoln Square yesterday. Andrew Wilson wrote a piece yesterday about this. Just knocking the numbers, just walk through the numbers. They are losing the shutdown fight. The Republicans know it.
Yep.
Mike Johnson knows it. They've got a pair of twos here, and they're trying to bluff.
It's absolutely true. And speaking of the maximalist or plenary view of the executive and so on, there was Pam Bondi's performance in the Senate yesterday, where she, I keep using this joke and nobody seems to laugh at us. So I'll try it on you. She reminds me of Ricky Bobby's girlfriend in Talladega Nights.
Absolutely.
I'm a racer's wife. I don't work. That's what she sounds like to me. But not to be totally juvenile
really
about
good,
this.
Actually, Walker, Texas Ranger.
That's right. Anyway, but to top that, Rick has topped that because we should show Rick's Substack article on Pam Bondi's fake orgasm. Oh, Pam, if shamelessness were an Olympic sport, the Attorney General just blew the landing door off her leotard and flashed her tits at the judges, hoping. I can't read anymore. It's too bad.
I know.
But it was the point you're making is that this was so performative.
Yeah.
It kind of blows the term performative out of the water. Like it just doesn't apply.
This was a show to keep her job.
Yes.
She has been on thin ice with Trump because she's not moving on a lot of these prosecutions. And that there is a perception in the White House, which I am told is a correct perception, that her own people, even her own folks, told her, you bring Comey to trial, you're going to lose.
Yes.
And she didn't want to lose. She didn't want to have Trump lose. So that performance was about saving her job. It was also about this thing that kind of fits into the whole informational autocracy frame that we're in right now, which is she wanted to show that the White House has no deference for the legislative branch, that the administration has no deference for congressional power at all, that she could go in and insult senators, basically the middle finger to all these Democratic senators. And she came in with her little burn book of, canned insults against them. And I don't know that they were quite ready for it, but they should have been.
Yes.
And I don't think they quite understood. You stop calling her general when she's insulting you and lying about you, and you start calling her Pam or Miss or whatever, and reframe the insult comedy she's trying to do and make it obvious to people what she's trying to do, because it was meant, as I wrote in the article, she's faking it for one guy. She's trying to convince Trump, I'm crazier, I'm meaner, I can get the Fox News conveyor belt running of shit, and I can have them repeating my insults to these guys, and it'll be good for us and good for you. I get why she does it. She really wants to keep that gig. But she's terrible at this work. She's really been very, very ineffective in Trump's eyes. I was told this from somebody pretty good in the Trump orbit, that he has this love-hate relationship with her. I mean, this person said to me, he loves her because he thinks she's hot.
Yeah. He
hates her because he thought she would go and burn people down faster. And
well, and as an astute observer of Florida politics, I mean, she's been that kind of person for him in Florida. I mean,
look, I've known Pam for 25 years, and when Pam was in the cabinet as Attorney General, she was one of those people who was like, how is Jeb going to vote? How is Governor Scott going to vote in the cabinet? That's how I'm going to vote. And so when Trump bribed her with $25,000, she dropped the Trump University case in Florida. And by the way, I tell people this in politics all the time. If you're going to take a bribe, it should have a B in front of the illions instead of an M in front of the illions. And it should never be anything less than a million. If you're going to take a bribe, take a bribe. $25,000, that's chump change in politics today. But he bribed her, and it was cheap. She works cheap.
And you shouldn't take it in a kava bag either, apparently. But
that was one of the great parts of yesterday. Is that we will know, folks, and I know there's a lot of people that are very depressed about where we're at. Folks, we are going to eventually know all these things.
Yeah.
And the funniest part about her driving this crazy train to indict Jim Comey for supposedly lying to Congress, I can tell you there were 3 or 4 moments yesterday where I could absolutely tell you she was lying to Congress.
Absolutely. No question about it.
100% tell you that. Especially her insane overreaction to Sheldon Whitehouse when he asked her, does the FBI, have you seen the pictures that the FBI is alleged to have about Donald Trump with little girls that a witness has told us that Epstein showed them? And her reaction, you could see there was about a 4-beat reaction there where her face didn't move for a second because she knew how bad that question was.
Because the slow computer in her brain was trying to catch
you
up.
could hear the gears going. I could tell you, I've seen guilt in people's eyes before. She has seen whatever is being described or something worse. And so she goes off and insults him about Reid Hoffman and all this other garbage. And we're going to know all these things eventually, folks.
Yeah. Well,
and by the way, the 5-year statute of limitations they used on Comey, Trump's going to be dead by that time, y'all.
He's going to have to pardon everybody on the way out, is my guess. But I mean, when she kept repeating that line, "Oh, if only you loved your state as much as you hate Donald Trump," I wish somebody had fired back, and maybe I missed this, or as much as you have contempt, whereas the president has contempt for the other branches of government. And that was what was evident throughout that whole thing. And it says to me that they don't see themselves as accountable to the people at all. And
none at all.
And this all flows from the top. Donald Trump, he thinks he's just going to skate on out of here without any accountability. And
Donald Trump is convinced that the Supreme Court's get out of jail free card and his pardon power will be sufficient.
Yeah.
I got to tell you, I think the worst case scenario for Bondi, Patel, Bongino, all the cover up, Blanche, all the people who are running the cover up on Epstein, but also for Kristi Noem and Tom Homan and Bovino and all these people running the ICE raids. There's a world where Donald Trump, because he is not healthy, just falls over dead one day before they get pardoned. And I promise you, J.D. Vance has absolutely no level of risk tolerance comparable to Donald Trump. He will let them all hang. He will let them all dangle.
I think that's, you know what? And I think that's a very strong possibility. And that's when it's going to be, let's make a deal time with a President J.D. Vance. If that were to come to pass, I totally agree with you, because I've thought about this, that J.D. Vance may come in and say, well, that shit show is over. That didn't go over well. Right. I want to try to run for re-election. I might try to become a different kind of person. And that means all this.
And Vance
take a hike.
Right. Yeah. Vance is an authoritarian in a different flavor than Trump, but he would understand politically. And I think he's already sort of hinting about this around some edges. He could get away with a lot of that authoritarian shit if he walked back 15% of the Trump craziness. Yeah. If he walked back maybe 20% of the Trump craziness, he would get grace from a lot of Republicans who are right now like, what are we going to do? He would get grace even from some Democrats and media folks who would say, okay, it's not quite the same. It's not great, but it's also not the apocalypse. Yeah. But pardoning these people for covering up Epstein. And Jim, I don't know, you've probably been seeing this as well. You got Laura Loomer out there tweeting tweets that look pretty panicked.
Yes.
Like, please don't pardon Ghislaine Maxwell. It would be the end. It would be the end. I don't know about you, but I think that the pardon's probably already in the bag.
Yes.
I think they probably already made the promise when Blanche went down to Tallahassee to see her when she was in prison here still.
I think it's done. Yeah, I think it's done. And that was what was revealed in that comment that he made the other. That was super sketchy, and it sounded like I mean, this is already a fait accompli. Rick, great to see you, my man. I heard you're working on a book. Am I allowed to say? I shouldn't say anything.
We'll talk more about it soon. But yes, I am working on a book, and I won't
say anything.
And my draft is due on November 1st. So that is why I am in the hole lately.
I'll let you go back to the hole. But great stuff, Rick, as always. Take care, man.
Thank you, my friend. Good
All right.
For having
Thanks
me.
a lot. Really appreciate it.